Minnesota's 2nd Congressional District has almost an equal number of Democrats and Republicans, and once again it's being targeted by both political parties as a swing district. Tonight we'll explore just how much of a swing district it really is, as Democratic Congresswoman Angie Craig fights for a fourth two-year term.
Now, this is Talking Points on CBS News Minnesota.
Good evening and welcome to Talking Points. I'm Esme Murphy. Minnesota's 2nd Congressional District includes all of Scott, Dakota, and Le Sueur counties. It's a south suburban district that is also 40% rural farmland. The 2nd Congressional District has voted for the winner in every presidential election since 2000. Democratic Congresswoman Angie Craig is running against Republican Joe Teirab. Among the key issues, inflation, abortion rights, the southern border, as well as farm policies. Joe Teirab declined to do an interview for this show. Teirab is a former federal prosecutor and county prosecutor. He opposes abortion rights with the exceptions of rape, incest, and the mother's life. Teirab did not win the Republican Party's convention endorsement, but he easily won the August primary. He's been endorsed by former President Donald Trump. Teirab did not live in the 2nd Congressional District until late 2023 when he moved from Minnetonka to Burnsville. While it is not a legal requirement for a U.S. House representative to live in their district, his opponent, Congresswoman Angie Craig, is accusing him of being a carpetbagger. Again, we repeatedly offered Teirab an interview and he declined, his campaign manager telling us it was a busy week. So let's start with the incumbent, Representative Angie Craig. Well, joining us right now is 2nd District Congresswoman Angie Craig. Congresswoman Craig, thank you so much for your time.
Well, it's great to be here.
All right. Once again, there are reports that you are in a tight race, or that this is, quote, maybe a toss-up race, or as much of a toss-up as there is in Minnesota. Yet you won the past few races very handily, that they were supposed to be very close and they haven't been. What do you feel about this one?
Well, my races are always close. This is a massively independent district, 30% Republicans, 30% Democrats, and 40% of this district identifies as independent. And, that's why I do my level best to maintain my independence as a member of Congress. It doesn't always make Democrats happy, but I vote against the administration about 30% of the time. I'm the 6th most likely Democrat to buck her party. And, the reason that I do that is because I'm representing the 2nd District of Minnesota. That's the job.
What are some of the instances where you have not voted with the president?
Well, the biggest example that I can give you is really the fact that I've stood up to him on a number of ag-related issues. The family farmers in my district are very important to me. 40% of this district is covered in corn and soybeans. And as I think about, voting for year-round E15, as I think about standing up to the administration on a number of issues related to the southern border, I'm one of 15 Democrats who banded together to put pressure on this administration last year and this year to make sure that our southern border was secure. I've pressured this administration and taken many votes to do everything we can to shut the southern border down from fentanyl coming across the border. These are the kinds of issues that my district really expects me to stand up for us on. And look, it's not standing up for anything other than my constituents. When I think about Bridget Noring and Tom Noring over in Hastings, who lost their son Devin to a fentanyl poisoning because this poison is allowed to come across the southern border. These are the kinds of things that if any administration is not acting quickly enough, I'm going to stand up and ask them, no matter if it's a Democratic or Republican administration, to do something about it.
So these weren't just procedural votes that you were voting and opposed the administration on. These were actual fentanyl policy votes that you took.
These were actual fentanyl policy votes. These were border security votes that the administration asked us to vote against. And I voted with Republicans. You don't get a record of being the 6th most likely Democrat in the country to buck the Democratic Party without voting on some substantive issues.
Let's talk about abortion rights, because I know you feel that played a key factor in your victory last time around. You specifically pointed out to a surge in the campus precincts in Northfield is coming in heavy and heavy for you. Obviously, the last race was in the aftermath, the immediate aftermath of the Dobbs decision. How important is this issue to your constituents? I mean, how often do you hear about it when you go in and talk to people on the ground in the 2nd Congressional District?
Well, what I can tell you, Esme, is that 40% independent in this district, they value their freedom. They don't want a politician, any politician in any state, anywhere near this issue. And the man I'm running against this cycle is more pro-life, more anti-abortion than any other candidate I have run against in the history of running for Congress. This is a man who, in his days at Cornell, was anti-abortion. This is a man, fast forward 15 years later, who serves on the board of a pregnancy crisis center. This is a man who has said that he wants to make abortion go away. And, I hear some of the words he's using now because he knows that the people in my district are pro-choice, the majority of them. I hear he's trying to backtrack a little bit, but what he says in public isn't matching what he's saying in private to groups, the largest pro-life organization in Minnesota. He's told them on a survey, we have it, you have it, that he sees a federal role in abortion, that he would support restrictions on drugs like mifepristone. This is a man who is not telling the truth. If you believe for a second that if he goes to Congress, he wouldn't support a federal abortion ban.
He says he doesn't, but he also says opposing abortion is a personal issue for him.
Well, it's a
made
personal.
That clear.
Sure. And I'm glad his own mother, had the choice to keep him. I'm glad she had that choice. What I'm saying and what others are saying in my district is that every woman should be free to make her own choice in consultation with her family and her faith and her doctor. That's what freedom is about. And that's what I'm going to make sure we do. Is I'm going to keep fighting until we restore Roe across this country. 1 in 3 American women now, because of positions like my opponents, right now no longer have access to abortion services in their state. And they're fleeing their own state. Doctors are being criminalized. That is our post-Roe world since Dobbs, and this man supports the Dobbs decision. And look, I'm not sure what to believe about Joe Teirab anymore. He lied to Republican voters when he said he would abide by the endorsement and not run in a primary. He's telling his voters on a pro-life survey that he supports a federal role in abortion, and now he's saying he doesn't publicly. So I don't know that we can believe Joe Teirab on much right now. I don't even think he knows where he lives at the moment because he's still getting parking tickets that list his home address in Minnetonka.
Well, let's talk about that. It is something that I think a lot of people are surprised about, that you actually don't have to live in a district to run and represent that district. But that is the truth. That's the law. Yet, obviously, most representatives do represent and live in their district and have for some time. He did just move into the district a short time ago, a few months ago in late 2023. Does that make a difference, even though it's not the law?
Well, look, first of all, I think you should just be honest about it and come clean. There's no reason to hide it. It's not the law. But I think it does make a difference in knowing the people that you're going to represent, right? So, my neighbors are in the 2nd district. My church is in the 2nd district. The teachers who educated our son is in the 2nd district. The people that I run into when I go to the grocery store in the 2nd district. It matters if you're going to know your neighbors and if you're going to represent them well. And look, I get an earful every time I go to the grocery store. I get it from Democrats. I get it from some Republicans. And to me, in a swing district, the most evenly divided district in America, currently represented by a Democrat, if I'm not getting a hard time from both major parties every once in a while, then I'm probably not representing this district as well as I could. And some of the language that the Republicans are going to use against me in the next election, because they always say the same thing. The record proves it wrong. The sixth most likely Democrat in the country to buck her party. And I get a kick out of some of the language because, I was among the first 5 Democrats in the country to ask my sitting president to step aside. I would just ask you, where is the courage from the Republican Party? Where is give me one example of Joe Teirab stepping on a line with the former president. I worked with the former president when it was right for this district, as I work with any administration when it's right for the second.
All right. Well, Congresswoman Angie Craig, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Esme.
Up next, Republican analyst Amy Koch. Well, joining us right now is Republican analyst Amy Koch. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Let me ask you about the 2nd Congressional District. They keep saying it's a swing district. It is evenly divided, but the Democrat, Angie Craig, keeps winning. What do you think? Do Republicans have a shot here?
Of course they do, right? The numbers don't lie. That has been a traditional Republican district until Angie Craig won, since John Klein stepped down and Angie Craig won. So it's definitely a possibility for Republicans. Having the right candidate is going to be important. And I really do feel like with Joe Teirab that they have got the right candidate now on the ballot. And so I'm excited to see what's going to happen. He's got a great resume, attorney, military. When you meet him, he's just this really brilliant, but yet down to earth guy. He's a good candidate. I think it's going to be her toughest race.
What do you think about the impact? Is Tim Walz going to have any impact being on the ticket with Kamala Harris at the top of the Democratic ticket? Do you see any kind of coattails dwindling down to Minnesota, to congressional races, and of course to the Minnesota House races?
For sure. There's no way to deny that that's going to happen. On what level, I'm not sure. And of course, Tim Walz also has his detractors in the state who are going to know him well. So, but I think for Minnesota Republicans, it got a little harder. Cannot deny, it got a little harder when Vice President Harris picked Governor Walz to join him on the ticket. But of course, up to that point, Donald Trump was going to win the state of Minnesota before, with Joe Biden on the ticket. So, obviously it got a little more uphill, but the numbers are still the numbers. And, Donald Trump has done well in the state of Minnesota. So, and he's going to drive out some Republican votes. So, for both sides, making sure that they get their people out, getting their base out in particular, and have people excited to vote is going to be the key. So,
Angie Craig believes that one of the reasons she won last time is because of abortion rights supporters coming out, especially in the college town of Northfield. Is abortion rights going to play a factor here, especially because Joe Teirab has a pretty interesting story that is compelling because it's personal. He says his mother almost aborted him, but then chose, because she was able to get support, chose to have him. So he tells that story. What do you think that the impact is there?
It was funny because it was sort of the elephant in the room on the last election, and yet nobody was talking about it, right? And then it became sort of this surprise loss for Republicans when they should have won big. Now, the Democrats didn't win lots and lots of seats, but the fact that they were able to blunt and hold off the Republican, what should have been a red wave, was the win. And it had almost entirely to do with women in particular getting out to vote, and particularly in the suburban areas. So all of that played very well for Congresswoman Angie Craig, obviously. It does seem less now. I will say it's been a couple years. Minnesota, has compounded again in law abortion rights, actually, to the very end. And so I just think that, depending on how it's spoken about, and I think Joe does a nice job of that, I think a lot of Minnesotans now have sort of have put that issue, still has a place, But now, inflation is back on the ballot. Public safety is back on the ballot. The things that everyone thought was going to play last time are really going to play more now.
Yeah,
Whereas they were not. Yeah.
Yeah, Teirab is trying to hit the inflation issue hard, which of course is a big issue for so many families. Do you think
I
that
just
still
heard an
plays as number one?
I had an amazing number. The cost of inflation for Minnesotans since 2021, which is just a couple of years, is $1,237 a family. $1,237 a month, I'm sorry, per family. That's incredible.
More. So that's how much more they're spending.
That's how much more they're spending. That's the increase since 2021. I mean, what's $1,200 is two cars. It's
a mortgage payment.
It's mortgage. It's right. It's another person's income. My goodness, it's childcare. Like all the things that you can assign that number. That's the number that Minnesota families are paying per month extra in inflation. So that's gonna hurt.
It'll be interesting to see. Amy Koch, thank you so much. We always appreciate your input.
Yeah, thanks, Esme.
Up next, Democratic analyst Abou Amara. Well, joining us right now is Democratic analyst Abou Amara. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Esme.
All right. It seems every 2 years recently there's been this talk of the 2nd District being very close in a toss-up race. Yet Congresswoman Angie Craig has come out on top handily, not a landslide, but comfortably. What do you think about this time?
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty much the same story, I think. Angie Craig has shown herself to be able to do really, really well. It's a close but almost safe district. At the same time, I think Republicans nationally see that this is one of the few pickup opportunities that they have because they're going to be playing lots of defense. And so I suspect they'll spend millions and millions of dollars in the 2nd Congressional District.
All right. An unusual situation with the candidate who's running on the Republican side, an odd situation. The man who got the Republican endorsement, Taylor Rahm, ended up quitting. He had not raised a lot of money. He ended up putting to work for Donald Trump's campaign here in Minnesota. Teirab has not gotten the endorsement, and so people seem to be a little uncertain about him. He also hasn't lived in the district very long, just a matter of months, which is not a requirement. Well, does that matter if you live in the district? I know the law says you don't have to live in the district, but I think most people think you do have to.
Yeah, I think it matters. I think it matters in terms of the contrast. Ultimately, you're fighting for the people of a particular part of the state, right? You're fighting for the 2nd Congressional District. And voters want to know you didn't just move here to represent us, but that you've lived here for a while, you've done things in the community, you're ingrained with the voters of the 2nd Congressional District. And so I suspect Angie Craig to talk about that on the campaign trail and in debates about how she's lived in the district and she's delivered for her constituents. She didn't move here to run for office. She's been living there the entire time.
In terms of coattails, now that Tim Walz is on the ticket, the presidential ticket as the vice presidential candidate, will he have coattails going down ballot, including for Angie Craig?
I believe he will. Set aside party, I think Minnesotans want to see their leaders on the national stage and they want to see them succeed. And so some of the data that I've actually looked at suggests that there could be as much as a 2 to 3 percentage point bump in some of these districts based on a vice president or a president being on the ballot from your particular state. And so I do believe there will be Tim Walz coattails in Minnesota. And one of the places that will have the most impact is a close race like the 2nd Congressional District.
Do you think that's just going to happen in congressional districts, or will it actually filter down to Minnesota state house races?
Yeah, I think it's going to have a crescendo effect. It'll not just be at the congressional level. I think we'll see it in state legislative races as well.
All right. Congresswoman Craig credits her positions supporting abortion rights as one of the things that led to her comfortable victory last time around. How big an issue is abortion rights, do you think, in the 2nd District?
Yeah, it's going to be huge. The 2nd Congressional District is kind of a mix of 2 different kinds of districts. It's got the suburbs, right? And then it also has the southern part of the Congressional District, which is more rural. So on the northern end of the district, abortion is going to be huge. It's going to mobilize lots of suburban women in Burnsville and Eagan and other parts of the metro. And that's going to be a key demographic for Democrats in November.
In terms of abortion rights, this particular candidate, the opponent, Joe Teirab, is an abortion rights opponent. He also has said that, it's personal for him that his mother had the option of having an abortion and chose to have him. Does that kind of story lend itself well to picking up and attracting voters?
Well, I think, Joe Teirab's story, as I understand it, is it could be a powerful one. The issue here, though, is although that's a powerful story, the people of the district want to know where you're going to stand on policy for them. And as we understand it, Joe Teirab's position is essentially anti-choice. And I think voters are going to be both empathetic to his personal story, but ultimately determine that, they want someone who's going to be an advocate for them, not just telling them the stories that they've lived as an individual.
I've seen some Democrats, both nationally and in other races, say they believe that there is amongst Republicans and Republican women sort of a closed door or not so broadcast pro-choice vote, that it's something that many Republican women feel they have to support abortion rights. They may not tell anybody, they may not tell their husbands or their partners, but they are going to cast their ballot on that. Is that real?
So I think if you look at the 2022 election, it is real. Now, the question is, how big is it going to be? But I do think there's a class of essentially never Trump voters who also abortion is their top issue. And again, I think women are going to decide this election. I mean, with Kamala Harris at the top of the ticket, suburbs playing an increased role, choice being one of the top issues, that demographic, that slice of the pie is going to be important. And I think it's understated how big it is.
All right. Well, Abou Amara, thank you so much. Always a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
And that does it for this edition of Talking Points. As always, please feel free to email me with comments or suggestions at esme@cbs.com. The show streams every Wednesday and Thursday at 6:30 and 9:30 p.m. on CBS News Minnesota. On Friday, the show posts to YouTube for on-demand viewing. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Esme Murphy, WCCO News.